Hello, everyone. Welcome back to week 11. We are cruising through this, cruising indeed through the semester. We've got some very important things coming up, very important things indeed. Well, to be perfectly honest, the semester is nearing its end, and this is now week 11, and weeks 13, 14, and 15, we're scheduled to be in person. And that is, I don't know about you, but I'm stupendously excited to finally be able to see you. So, but it's good to have the verification, the knowledge of which direction we're going in, and we can prepare for in-person classes for the first time in a very long time. Today, we're going to talk about metaphors and how we can use them in our speech. And we'll talk, but before that, let's take care of some housekeeping. So, weeks 13, 14, and 15, the last 3 weeks of the semester, we are scheduled to have in-person classes. So we can see each other all fine and dandy like sour candy. So, having in-person classes means that I want to have in-person presentations, and I think it'd be a really nice thing to do. So we're going to do that. So this is week 11, week 12, then 13, 14, 15, we have that. So, well, I want to have our final project be in-class speech effectively, but we don't have time for everyone to make their own individual speeches, so they'll have to be group presentations. But this would be good practice for us to use what we've learned to synthesize everything, what we've learned throughout the semester, into a final product, which is very exciting. So we've talked about this flag project, and now that we know which way we're going, I can make it more. We can actually have it. Before, when we didn't know, I was ready to have the flag project be the final project, but it's not. So we're going to have in-person classes, so it's not going to be the final project. It's going to be something better. So but I think the flag project can be an excellent warm-up preparation for our final project, and so I want it to be small, nothing too stressful. And I'll give you an example of that I made up at the end of this video. But I want us to start practicing thinking about symbolism and public speaking and making it work that way. Just to remind you about the flag project, your art skills are not being graded. Your presentation skills, your speaking skills those are being graded. Your actual art skills are not being graded. So this is a warm-up for our final project. All right. Let's dig in, shall we? Okay.
Now, son, on your first day of school, I'd like to pass along the words of advice my father gave me.
Homer, you're dumb as a mule and twice as ugly. If a strange man offers you a ride, I say take it.
That was a dramatic childhood.
All right. So the father there was remembering, his son is going to school for the first time, first day of school. And he remembers back to his first day of school what his father said to him. And his father said, you're as dumb as a mule and twice as ugly. What does that mean? Dumb as a mule, twice as ugly. That's a metaphor. And English loves metaphors. And we're going to talk about how we use metaphors, what metaphors mean, and when we can use metaphors and when we cannot use metaphors. So the metaphor, in basic sense, takes an object or an action or an idea even and compares it to something familiar but unrelated. So we can better understand how good something is, or how it is, or it's a way of understanding something without the direct vocabulary for it. So the comparison, the metaphor is always non-literal, so which can make it illogical. But usually, the metaphor's meaning is clear. So, for example, Mother Teresa once said, "Love is a fruit in season at all times, and in reach of every hand." Now, is love an emotion? Is love a fruit? No, it's not. We cannot. It does not grow on trees. But her metaphor, love is a fruit in season at all times. Are fruits in season all around the year? No, of course not. That's not true. But this is a metaphor. So reality, the rules of reality don't, they don't apply. It's poetic. And her last statement, and in reach of every hand. You ever picked an apple? Probably you haven't, actually. Well, apples grow in trees, right? So to pick apples, usually you need ladders, or in fact, special machines nowadays, to actually get the apples off. If you don't have the ladder, and if you're not a tall person, you can't reach the fruit. But Mother Teresa's quote is saying that love can be had by everyone if they just try and go out and get it, and it can happen all the time. And love is a wonderful thing. It's a sweet emotion. So metaphors are used to help explain things, compare things, but they're on their face value, they're illogical because they don't follow the rules of reality. They're poetic. So metaphors can be quite difficult, and also for language learners, because metaphors often require a degree of cultural background knowledge. I'll give you an example I just thought of. For something to have chicken legs in American English, in general American English, if something is chicken legs, it means it's very thin. As in, think the the bottom part of a chicken leg. But my wife says I have chicken legs because they're very big and they have a lot of muscle, so a lot of meat on them. So, like a chicken drumstick. So, my wife is Korean, so she has a different cultural background in her language and how she uses language. So, her metaphor of my legs being chicken leg, like chicken legs to me, is nonsensical and doesn't make sense because I don't have thin legs. But the metaphor of something being chicken-legged, being very thin and skinny, to her is nonsensical because we eat chicken legs and we know there's meat on those bones. So background cultural knowledge does play a role when using metaphors, and that's where the difficulty can come in. So another example we have, she was the black sheep of the family. Well, unless we're talking about Shaun the Sheep and those adventures that he and his family go on, we're probably not talking about actual sheep. We're talking about people and how they relate with their family. Now, what color are sheep usually? If you think of a sheep in your head, what does that sheep look like? Probably looks like these guys, these fellows, not this one. But we can see here, what in the devil are you doing? Go away. All right. Let's see. So we can see here, sheep, most sheep are white. Yes, some sheep are black. So what does it mean to be a black sheep? It means you stand out, even without trying, effectively without trying. That's just how things are. You're just different. So it happens with some families, well, a lot of families. There'll usually be one family member who's just different in character or in habit or in something that is, that's how they are. So if you're the black sheep, it's quite often used negatively, as in you're doing things the wrong way. But it also means that you're very independent as well, which can be a positive thing. So there are many different types of metaphors as well. There's common metaphors, which are also known as direct metaphors, primary metaphors, conventional metaphors. These are the easiest ones. These are, we can directly see where the link is and easily made and understood. We see the example on screen being he was a fish out of water at his new school. Now, what happens if you take a fish out of water? Well, it's not happy. Now, this isn't obvious, not literal, because if you take a fish out of water, it will die. But if you take a fish out of water, we take it out of its natural environment. It struggles. It's flailing. It's trying to swim, but there's nothing to swim in. So it has a really hard time. So for people, if a person is a fish out of water, it means that they're out of their natural environment. The things that would normally work, that they do, don't work. So they have to try to learn the new ways of doing something, the new social cues, the new ways of speaking, and they have to learn them quickly. So we see this quite a lot in like movies or things like that, where someone has to go to a new environment, a new culture. And they learn about the new culture, discover themselves, maybe find love along the way. It all works out. Usually, I think. Often for comedic purposes. So here we have a unhappy picture of this fish out of water, and it's we can see and understand quite implicitly and explicitly as well what is meant. Even though a student is not a fish and a fish is not a student, even though they're in a school. So a group of fish is called a school of fish. A school of fish. I just thought of that. That's a dad joke if you want to, or ajay gag as we call in Korean. All right, implied metaphors are the ones that you have to use your imagination more. So direct metaphors are straight to the point. Implied metaphors require a bit of connecting with what's being said, with knowledge of another thing. We have a direct metaphor. She was a dog with a bone. Okay. So we've seen dogs. We've seen dogs chew bones. If you have a dog, if you have a dog and you think your dog is very cute and nice and so kind, but then sometimes if you give your dog like a bone, a chicken bone, you shouldn't give your dog chicken bones, they can choke, but like a rib or something, like something big, and you see that old animal awaken inside its genes, the hunter predator come out, and it is they go not crazy, but they are very possessive of it, and they are happy to start just chew on it. So if someone is a dog with a bone, it means they're very happy, but also protective of their new thing. And so it's nice. This one, the second one, she tucked her tail between her legs and ran away. This is an implied metaphor. We don't mention a dog. There's no mention of what the dog is, but this behavior is what dogs do when they give up. It's their own social cue that they are no longer fighting. They're done. They give up. So they're it's dog language to other dogs, saying a direct thing. So if somebody tucks their tail between their legs and runs away, it means they give up. They've given up, and they're done. But if you don't know that about dogs, then this metaphor is much more confusing. And even if you do know about dogs, it requires another step in understanding what's being said. Now, the third kind of metaphor is called extended metaphors, or some people call them sustained metaphors. These can be direct or implied, but they create a greater emphasis with the comparison they're making because they're longer. These can go on for several sentences. The metaphors we've been talking with so far, they've all been, phrases, single sentences. Extended metaphors are they're extended. They're much longer. And so, it happens. We see this much more often in poetry. This is an example. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Michelangelo. This is an extended metaphor example. Let's see. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped, his feet are tied. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. All right. Now, Michelangelo isn't talking about birds. Literally, she's talking about something else. She's talking about humans. Humans in jail, in particular African Americans in jail. Or it could be really anyone, but in her particular repertoire, that's what she was talking about. Because imprisoning someone dehumanizes them, makes them more animalistic, but they still have some hopes and dreams. But yes, we see several metaphors, but the extended metaphor of the caged bird, and the caged human, their behaviors. And what does a caged bird really want? It wants to be free. What does any caged animal or person want? To be outside, not inside the cage. So, next we have dead metaphors. These are ones that are overly used in the past, so much so that we don't use them anymore. But you have learned these in English class, I'm sure. But it's one of those things that it's good to know, so when you do hear it, you know what they're talking about. But you shouldn't do it yourself. It's trite, it's vapid, it's lost its meaning. When we use words too much, there's a very strong belief that the more you use a word, that people use a certain vocabulary or a term, it loses its bite, its edge. Think of it like a blade, a knife. If you use a knife very, very often and don't sharpen it, it becomes dull, becomes less sharp. And so there's a strong contingent of people who believe that is true for words as well, that as a group of people or a society or as individuals, we use words too much, then they lose their actual meaning and they become diluted. So I'm sure on an individual basis, there might be certain things that you say or think of that don't really mean that much. I'll give you an example. Back, 10, 15 years ago, people used the word epic for everything. Oh man, that game was epic. Oh, that hamburger, it was epic. Epic has a very particular meaning, and words have meaning. An epic means, in this case, in how they're meaning it, as in extraordinarily awesome and good. It has other meanings as well, but that's what they're using it for. But a hamburger is never epic. The story of Gilgamesh, the Babylonian, mythology, that's epic. There's things that are Yi Sun-shin. His life was epic. Hamburgers are not epic. Even the Yi Sun-shin hamburger in Yosu, even though it's pretty good, it's not epic. So people use this word so much that it loses its meaning. It just becomes another word for good, and we already have a word for good. It's called good. But we see this. It happens at all times, but we become aware of it as we get older. Nowadays, me personally, the phrase "the worst," and that's usually referring to people, as in somebody is the worst. And if someone is the worst, then because I'm very simple-minded, I think they're a very bad person, as in they've done evil, terrible things. Of murder and thieving and destruction. They're a criminal in the highest regards. But how it's used is often for people who say silly things on Twitter, or they're just general idiots. And being an idiot's not a good thing, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Most of us are. So it's not a big problem. But going back to dead metaphors, phrases like, it's raining cats and dogs. Now, that's a disgusting metaphor to me, because I think very visually, and visualizing it raining cats and dogs is not a happy thing for me. But it means raining a lot, of course, but we don't say that as much. I see it much more in textbooks and in classrooms, and not in the regular speech. You're the light of my life. Hey, it's romantic. But it's something that used to mean a whole lot. But now it doesn't mean as much anymore. So it's something to be aware of in our own speech, in our prepared speeches especially. All right. This one's a fun one to have if you like confusing people. Mixed metaphors. When we take two metaphors that aren't related and put them together into a mess, and it doesn't work out. For comedic purposes, it's a character trait for some people. Stuart Pearce, who was a British soccer coach, a manager, he said, I can see the carrot at the end of the tunnel. He mixed up two metaphors, the carrot and the stick, talking about motivation, and the light at the end of the tunnel meaning the end of the dark times. But, you know, we kind of understand what he's talking about. The carrot, the good thing, at the end of the darkness. It happens a lot. It's sometimes because of television and practiced media, non-native English speakers tend to have heightened expectations about the perfection of language and perfection of speech by native speakers. But native speakers make mistakes all the time. People do trip over words. People do drop pronunciation of phenoms. We don't say everything. Humans are very lazy, and we make mistakes, and we get vocabulary confused all the time. That happens. So don't worry too much about being perfect, because nobody's perfect. Right now there's the speech contest, English speech contest, and it's English speech contest season for lots of schools, and Korea places an emphasis on memorization of speeches. But do you know who memorizes speeches? Actors. Actors memorize speeches. Politicians don't. Presidents don't. We saw in that video with President Kennedy. He had his notes in front of him. He had his speech in front of him to read. Nowadays they have the teleprompter screens. They look like clear plastic music stands. And presidents and politicians can use those so they can look up and out, and they can still see the words and look like they're not looking. President Obama, he got made fun of for some reason. Like people were acting like he was the first guy to ever use a teleprompter, when people have been using them for 60 years. They've had cue cards before, so it's always been a true thing. So don't place too much emphasis on memorization of certain things, especially when we're getting into conversation. And for your presentations, don't try to memorize, because I don't want you to get stressed in that way. If you really want to, I can't stop you, but I don't want you to get stressed in that kind of way. Last one, I believe, sensory metaphors are talking about metaphors that appeal to our senses of sight, sound, smell, taste, or touch, and these have are much more immediate and understandable. His voice was silky smooth. Her smile lit up her room. The chicken tasted like fire. Bulldog, that's right there. Something smelling like gym socks. For example, some people say that like 된장찌개 or 청국장 smells like old socks, but I don't think it does. But some people do say that. So usually, sensory metaphors are very, very common because we're comparing something to another thing. This happens a lot with, I'll say, mild swear words. Korean doesn't have the same emphasis on human excrement as a swear word as English, but you know the little character Jordy? I don't have one here. My wife likes Jordy. Now, Jordy, some people call him green shit because he's like a little chorokdong. But that's a metaphor. When you compare something or someone to something else, it can be positive or negative. That's still just a metaphor. So we use sensory metaphors a whole lot. All right. So that's about metaphors. Next, we're going to talk more about our flag videos, because you're going to make videos. We'll get into that, and how that's going to work. All right. Thank you. Goodbye. This is the example video, example that of a flag presentation. We're just going to take a look at and walk through and show you. Just before I forget, here we just talked about Jordy. Here's Jordy, and some people are very mean and say he looks like green shit or cholokdong. But Jordy's a very nice boy or girl, a dinosaur. He is technically, and so be nice to him. He's a good guy. He's just trying. All right, this is the example of a flag presentation. Once we get started, how you do it, you can use PowerPoint. That's fine. If you just want to draw on a piece of paper and stand in front of the camera, that's okay too. Perfectly fine. We're not going to have a lot of time to work and prepare on this presentation because we'll have another project coming up, and I want to give us time for that as well. So let's get right into it, shall we? All right. Now, the example will start in 5, 4. Hello, my name is John Harrison, and I want to talk to you about a problem that Gyeonggi Province has. A major problem. A flag problem. The current flag of Gyeonggi Province is an embarrassment. It's a disaster. It is quite literally a logo that was never meant to be placed on a flag. It is confusing, nonsensical. No one can know what it means by looking at it. Let's take a look very briefly. We have a white field, perfectly fine, but then it gets confusing. We see a blue square at an angle and what appears to be a light green and a orangish square underneath with a series of circles and lines connected in a pattern of a sort. Do we know what these circles mean? No. What are they immediately understandable? No. We see the name of Gyeonggi-do on the flag. Well, that doesn't help us. Then we say Seisoke, global inspiration. For whom is that for? I don't know. Do you know? Global inspiration. Does that mean Gyeonggi it has inspiration from the globe, or is it giving inspiration? Is it giving or taking, taking or giving? We don't know. It is unclear. A lot of unclear parts of this. So we don't know what it means, and we don't know who this flag is for. Flags should be for the people it represents. It talks to the people it represents, and it tells the world about those people. And that's why I think this is a better design for Gyeonggi Province. This represents Gyeonggi to the world and to her own people. Now you'll notice I kept the same colors mostly, but I've changed it to be more sensical. The yellow represents rice at harvest time. As everyone knows, the best rice in Korea comes from Icheon and Yeoju in Gyeonggi-do. The green is for the nature of the province, especially in the northern part where the mountains are of Bukhansan. The dove is the provincial bird, and it represents peace and the hope for peace, especially for Korea and especially for Gyeonggi-do being a divided province. So for peace and for reunification. The blue has double meaning. Gyeonggi-do, by its very name, means the area around the capital. That's what Gyeonggi is. And so, as the blue is circled by the green and the gold, Seoul is circled by the green nature of Gyeonggi-do and the beautiful, delicious rice of Gyeonggi-do. But also, Gyeonggi-do has a lot of water. The Han River doesn't just define Seoul, it defines Korea, and it flows through Gyeonggi province. Not to mention other rivers and streams as well. So all of these meaningful symbols better represent who the people of Gyeonggi are and what is so special about this beautiful place. And that's why this is a better flag for Gyeonggi province than the disaster of the current one. Thank you.